You are listening to the Artwonk Podcast, a show where we take a deep dive into what it takes to be successful in marketing if you are a visual artist or craftsperson. We will explore how the art world works as well as how to better achieve your professional goals. I am Neville Parker, your host and resident Artwonk. So settle in and join me as we get today's show underway. This is episode number 12. Should I open a studio gallery? Yay! Kia ora! Hey, welcome into another Artwonk podcast. Welcome to this one. This one is episode 12. Gosh, we're ticking them along. Episode 12 is all about art galleries and specifically about what is involved in opening or selecting and making a decision as to whether to open a studio gallery. Now, this came about, as explained in the last podcast, where we talked about an inquiry I got from Anonymous. Anonymous said that he was considering opening a gallery in his town and was inquiring as to what things he might need to look out for or look into before he went ahead with the idea. And I identified 3 different types of galleries that it could be that might be of interest. The traditional white box or white wall gallery, the art shop gallery, and the studio gallery. So last time we looked at white box galleries, what they were, how they worked, where they should be, all those types of things. This time we're into the world of the studio gallery. What is it about a studio gallery that gives you some unique opportunities? Now, I don't know whether Mr. Anonymous actually is a maker, so forgive me if this is completely off the rails for you, but for a lot of people, it's a really serious option. The idea of opening up your studio and selling from it is something a lot of people consider. It brings together some of your cost structures and makes for a viable option, or more viable option. It overcomes the need for staffing and for moving away from your core practice as a maker, and it gives a connection to the process and can add a whole lot of really valuable little additional, I guess you'd call them strands to your sales process. So it has a lot of value. It also has a lot of negatives. And so let's have a look at the idea of a studio gallery. Now, bear in mind, just because you're opening a gallery doesn't mean you have to be the artist if you're a studio gallery. You could well lease out studio space and still create a studio gallery. But the thing about a studio gallery is that people come as much for the entertainment value, the enlightenment of seeing the work being made, the inspiration, and the whole, I call it artitainment. It's a whole process of being enthralled and enwrapped in the process of making. And often they buy as a consequence of that. It's not always a place that people go to simply to view art, because the perception with a studio gallery is that there will be a much more limited range of choice. So when you're looking at making a studio gallery your primary outlet, there's some things that you need to look at. And I'm going to take this through a similar format to the last episode. We're going to look at the where, the who, the what, the why, the how, etc. So again, we'll start with where. Where should you place a studio gallery? Well, a lot of people, their first instinct is in their studio. But the reality is, if you're a maker and you have a studio now, did you choose that space as a selling space or a making space? Most people, the simple answer is I chose it as a making space, or potentially I didn't choose it at all. It was what was available. Okay, that's fine for doing what you're doing, but is it going to work as a gallery space? Well, potentially not, because there are some specifics you have to consider. So we should look at where as if we're starting fresh. That way we can look at all of the considerations, or at least a good number of them, and evaluate their values and system that you need to go through. Number 1, where is a good place for a studio gallery? Well, the reality is, unlike a white box gallery or an art shop, which are attached primarily to business transactional type of environments, i.e. retail centres and centres of town and proximity to those things, a studio gallery does have the luxury of being able to be placed pretty much anywhere, because you will be driving people to your business by the hook or the invitation that they're going to come and see things being made. And people will travel for that alone. It is kind of like going to the park or going out for dinner. It's a process that in your mind, it involves a journey, and the journey can be part of the fun. So you do not have to consider your limitations quite as close to base as the others have. So what we're looking for when we're looking for a where is we're looking for a place where you can both make and sell and host visitors. And those things don't always add up to an easy mix. We're looking for a place that has parking, a place that is allowed to be used as a selling space, because a lot of homes you can't do that legally within your council ordinance. So it's worth knowing what the rules are within your local body environment. You're needing a place where there's parking, which means you're going to have to look at accessibility. Can people get in and out? What hazards or dangers might there be? If you're looking at leasing, say, for instance, a factory site or a workshop space because you sculpt, what are your neighbors like? What are the conditions of the environment that you're presenting from? So ultimately, we sell magic. I don't know. How do we describe what we sell? We're selling more than just our product. We're selling ourselves and our story when we're selling art from our studio. The brand of the gallery is actually us. The two become intertwined in a way that you have to actually really understand which of those things is working on any given day. So the location should be a place that's safe, that's accessible, that does cater for things like parking and the likes. And it has to be a space that enables you to separate your working process from the public in a way that keeps you safe and comfortable when you're working, and your materials and the tools that you use keeps people safe from them and you safe from them touching them. Because goodness me, these are the tools of your trade. They're also part of you, part of your process. You have to think about this part quite carefully in the beginning. So we're looking for a where that meets a number of these things. Now, as with the white box gallery, a studio gallery can exist upstairs reasonably well, because people will climb stairs or go down driveways or whatever to visit an artist's studio. But bear in mind, a lot of people are scared of getting trapped and they're too nice. They don't want to say that they have to go now. So places that have really clear levels of engagement, like you can see the destination from the road, you can see where you belong and where is safe and where isn't, will have an impact on your sales. Some people have studios that are absolutely amazing, set in gardens and out-of-the-way places that are part of the magic. And that can become part of your marketing, your story that you're generating, your what we call before your unique selling proposition, the thing that makes you stand out. But, and here's the big but, if you're looking at making sales as a primary part of your income stream by selling direct, you do need to think very carefully about whether or not the things that excite you will excite your market. So if you're going to have a studio as a shed at the bottom of your garden, and you can get people to park on the road and they can see a way in and out, that means that they're not funneling into an unknown experience, and you've got clear signage, and you're allowed to do this because the council has no problems and your neighbours haven't made complaints about visitors coming and going or whatever. All of those things together, you still have to look at the space and work out, is this actually a selling space? Can I create within it the right environment to encourage people to consider a purchase and not just come and look at me as if I'm an animal in a zoo, where they can view the curiosity and then leave again feeling like they've had something worth their outing. So it's a balancing act when it comes to studio galleries. And there are a number of things you should consider. Do you, as an artist, and now again we're focusing this on Mr. Anonymous, so I'm going to assume that you're an artist. It's so much easier. Do you have any of your processes that you don't want to share? Anything that you do that is kind of, it's sensitive information because it's part of how you do what you do that keeps you unique? Because you have to consider that when you're deciding on a studio gallery. If you feel, no, look, I paint like everyone else, I put the pigment onto the canvas, I don't have a problem with people seeing my process, that's great. That's a wonderful thing to have. If you have some stuff you might want to keep separate, little finishing techniques or tricks that you do, then you're going to have to think about whether or not you can still do this experience, but separate some of those things to either being done outside of trading hours or in a way that is not as visible to the public. A lot of people who go to galleries, I said this last time, are artists. And an enormous number of us, we use the internet, we look at books, we watch movies and films about art, and we love to go and visit studios because studios will inspire us. And some people are less than thoughtful when it comes to the way they take an idea and use it. They don't see that your origination journey, the story of how you got to where you are, is a really important piece of the work process. They just go, oh, I can do that, and copy. So when you open up your studio, you're opening up what, for me, is a very spiritual, I guess, place. I find that energy that I invest in a studio, the time I spend there making, helps condition me to be a better maker when I walk into my studio spaces. Even the one where I'm recording right now, my first few podcasts were hard work, but as I've spent more time coming in here and actually using it for this use, I access that part of me much quicker. And if other people are coming in and going out and doing things around me, that can diminish my the connection I have with my space. So when you are opening up your space, you have to protect yourself as a creative. You have to protect yourself emotionally because people can be hurtful, unintentionally make comments that really can hit you at your core. You have to be aware that they will distract you from working. You cannot just ignore them. You've invited them in. They are your guests. You have to be aware that you are going to be pushing some boundaries in terms of your environment, your neighbors, your friends, and everything if you're doing this from home. And also, you cannot separate your business as easily when you trade from home. So if you've got a studio space at home that you're hoping to convert across to a gallery, then you have to consider what that truly means. It is now a public space. You can put signs on the gate and you can tell people that you only trade between X hour and X hour. But the reality is that once you open that opportunity up, you also open a whole lot of other engagement that you may not wish to deal with. I have literally had people banging on my door at 8:30 at night asking if I'd open the gallery that we had on the property because they had forgotten to get a birthday present and they were on their way to a party. And it's really hard to look them in the eye and go, no, go away. This is my time. You don't. You open up and you do all the right things because that's actually a part of being in that business, but it does destroy your own sense of space. So if you're looking at a ware that's on your property, we're going to have to put in place some basic protectors. If you're looking at a ware that you're going to hire or buy or lease to open as a specific destination, then you have the opportunity to pick and choose. And I'd reference you back to the White Box Gallery. A number of the things you're going to look at: location, accessibility, lighting, street lighting, things like that, and an understanding of who you're going to be selling to and the why you're selling to them so that you pick a space that enables you to both make the work and retail. It's tricky to get, but they're out there. Primary thing you're looking for, again, is something that feels right. If you have to go past two tire places, a crowd who drains stump oil out of cars, and somebody who's got a beekeeping operation all in a row before we hit your little gallery shop, and it's a shared driveway, and there's all of this vehicle dross all over the place, by the time they get to your door, they've probably lost a connection with the magic. That might not be the best location for the average art business. Really good spot for another vehicle type of industry or something that doesn't deal with the public. So don't be beguiled by price alone. You're going to be planning on making some sales from this space, so think of it as much about a retail decision as you do thinking about it as a studio decision. The big thing to remember is you need a studio anyway, and you were going to have somewhere. So you're going to split some of your overhead in the way you look at your structure between those two expenses. Okay, so we're looking at a where that's accessible, that still talks to the idea of a creative environment. And anyone who's been to the Art Centre in Christchurch or to a number of different places around the world where you have other artists coming together and work and sell, there is this thing that happens where once you've got a couple of entities doing their thing, others sort of feed off that. So one option you have is looking for what's out there now and seeing whether there's a way you can add in or add on to it. So while we're making our decision, we should be thinking about the who we're looking to sell to and what we're looking at selling. So if I'm a clean artist, so I paint or I do something that doesn't involve making a lot of mess around me, I can work in a relatively confined space in a controlled fashion, then I can choose a lot more spaces than if I'm a sculptor or a carver or a printmaker or somebody who needs other facilities. And as such, the whom I'm selling to is likely to be slightly different as well. The people who are hunting out a sculptor are likely to want to see works in space, and that's why a lot of the best studio spaces that are galleries are actually gardens and things for a person like that. And the who will come to look at that is people who are intrigued by not just the object, but the making process of that object. So the people are different from a shopping market because they are wanting to engage in your process as well. So we're not as interested in finding other artists to represent unless we have excess space or we're sharing our studio, but we are looking at trying to actually coalesce our voice into a really strong me experience. So people are wanting to come and learn about you when they come to your studio. They want to know about you in the full sense of the word. What inspires you? How do you work? Where do you work? Why do you work here? And what do you make in this experience? This environment? And those are the things that you have to amplify. You have to be generous with this information. Let them in. And make sure that when you're talking with them that you remind yourself in the back of your mind at least that these people have come to see me. You are the star of the show. The artwork is a product of the show. And as such, if you're not good with people, you feel uncomfortable, this definitely could be the wrong place for you to be. You have to have a little bit more of an extrovert in you to do this type of thing. You're living your business in a very public way. You also have no other way of adding validation. When you put work into a gallery, the other people that are represented in the gallery become the validators. They become the ways that people will measure you. That gallery represents those people, therefore you must be good because you're there. In your own studio space, it's not quite the same type of thing, and that can affect the way people buy, but also the price expectations as well. So the who makes it is you. The who buys it is going to be people who are looking to connect with you. Okay, and that will build over time into something quite magical if you can be that person. So making innovative work and different work is not as important as being open about what you do. You can do something quite repetitive, quite procedural, quite mundane in lots of ways within the art environment, but still be a successful home gallery or studio gallery. The what you do obviously comes down to your skill base. Unless you're planning a studio gallery as part of your business plan, And then you have to decide where the gaps in the market are and what can be fairly made within the space you've found. So as a business model, I have a gallery at the moment that has a spare space in the back area where we have a little courtyard and a small room. And it's not a massive amount of space. It would suit a jeweler, a painter, somebody who works on reasonably, personal sized pieces. So I could lease that out and actually amplify the fact that our gallery space has studio in it. And that's a way of doing that. You can also look at picture framers who have galleries attached as being a studio gallery. Their core produce, the way they make what they make and everything, is a good part of the story. The gallery is a separate story that runs parallel. So those types of business options are there. And obviously, if you are a framer who chooses to have a gallery, you need to make sure that you are honouring your framing business and making all your decisions about that first, because that's what drives the gallery. The artist coming to you, get your work framed, or get their work framed by you, and you can then say, hey, would you like to have it in the gallery? Some may not, and that's okay. But you see, the hook is in the making. Why? Why would you do it this way? What makes it different for you to have a studio gallery over a representative gallery? Well, let's look at some obviouses. In a representative gallery, you are going to pay a commission, which goes towards the overheads and the running of that gallery and building the marketing and the connections and things that add value to your work. Because you've got a studio gallery, you don't have to pay anyone that commission, but you should still be factoring that into your pricing structure, because you still have to pay for the studio side as well as pay for the gallery side. And you'll still have advertising, marketing, packaging, and all those other costs. But what you're doing there is you're rewarding yourself for that effort. And that effort needs reward because it's taking you away from your making time. It will do every single time you have to stop and deal with people. And some people will have a partner, a spouse or other who would be able to step in and take over the selling. That's really cool to have on your side. But people still want to see the artist working. So, that cost needs to be factored in. You are, by default, adding a value system, being there as a maker, so that when they come to you, they are seeing what you're making as having value, because there's a real person attached. It's not just a product in a space, and that's something that's valuable. But you will still have to exercise the standard practices of welcoming, qualifying, and closing if you're wanting to survive. The joy of a studio environment is you can tap commission markets, and you can build direct relationship with your collectors, and that can be a really valuable thing if you have something that people are likely to collect. And we see it with potters and other types of artists who make series of things like a full dinner set, or it really doesn't matter what. Could be jewelers, can be anyone in that sense. From painter through, it's a very versatile type of environmental thing to explore. I think where you're hearing me stumble is because I'm struggling a little bit to imagine what Mr. Anonymous might do. And, obviously without being able to focus this, it gets waffly quite quickly. So let's just do a bit of a recap. The studio gallery offers you better margins. It offers you a way of augmenting the cost of your studio and transferring some of it to sales and marketing and vice versa. So it can streamline your cost structures. It offers you a chance to make the margin that you would be losing to the cost of sale if you were represented somewhere else. And it offers you a chance to tap connections to markets that you might not ordinarily get easy connection to, like commissions, design jobs, and other things. It costs you interruption to flow. It costs you personal boundaries in terms of being able to express and explore things in your own space, in your own way. You become public property. it costs you the opportunity to pick up those peripheral relationship values that you'll get out of a gallery. You work more on your own, more in your own space and in your own head and your own reality, which can sometimes skew over time. So you have to be careful and aware of that. And of course, it will cost you in that you're going to have to give up space of making or pay for more space so that you can keep the same size making space and have a selling space. So the pros and cons work out roughly even for a lot of artists and a lot of art forms. The studio gallery is a powerful way to take your work to market, but the market has to come to you. And as such, you are only going to be dealing with motivated buyers. So a really good advertising and marketing plan and a really good idea of how you're going to bring people into your world is an important part of the mix. Over the two, the white box gallery or the studio gallery, it's a hard one to call. I've had both. I've had pleasure from both. I've enjoyed because my studio gallery was actually based on a property that I owned. I was building an asset base that every time I worked on the garden or any of the environmental stuff around the gallery, I was actually adding to my own wealth, and hence it made it easier for me to develop and spend on the buildings, on those things. But equally, the cost was that we always were living in a public space. Even when we were closed, there was this expectation that it wasn't just our space. And that over time, I found to be quite a burden because it did make it harder to separate those needs and wants. And then the final thing that I think is well worth looking at when you're talking about studio galleries in terms of costs and benefits, one of the costs are that you are feeding your competition direct access, because anyone can walk in that door, to what it is you're doing, the why, the when, the here, the who, and all of that stuff. And in a competitive market, if you have somebody making something similar to you, that can be a small danger. I mean, we don't consciously think that way in the art community, to my experience, but subconsciously, people do still ring fence ideas. They still take ownership of things they think are theirs. They're humans, and we will respond as humans do. And sometimes that defensiveness, that natural inclination to say, hey, back off, dude, that's my idea, that's my thing. When you've put it out there, you've given up the right to do that. You can't choose how to disclose. And that, if it's not part of your nature to share openly, or it's part of your process to have a number of mistakes until you build a competency level, that's a real cost to you as a maker. It can stifle some people. On the other side, if you're seen as an innovator and people love visiting because they have no idea what you're going to be doing next, there you go, we're back again. So this one has been a bit more waffly simply because I think it is more personal. The person who's looking at doing a studio gallery has to be the right person. This is one of the few gallery formats that works really well with the creative persona, because that desire to reinvent, to get enthused, to get distracted. You can focus yourself one day on making, one day on serving, some days on not being there. Oh my God, while we're at it, be there. You know, if you're going to offer a studio gallery, some people have this attitude, well, it's my studio, so it's not like a real gallery. If you're inviting people to come and buy, it's a real gallery. You have to keep regular hours. It's a job. And treat it like a job. See that the benefits and features that you offer are going to add value to somebody else's world. And if they add value, if you don't perform, they've lost something. That's a cost to them. They've lost that value. They will feel a heightened disappointment in you. So yeah, if you're going to do the studio gallery, you have to still view it as a gallery. If you don't want to keep regular hours, if you don't want to do that, if you want to be a free spirit, don't do this process. It's not worth it. It will only diminish your brand. And, just on that whole brand thing, I've had a wonderful question come through about whether or not if you produce other types of artwork, you're a singer, a writer, a poet, and happen to also be a painter or a sculptor or whatever it is you are, should you separate those things out? Should you make them different, either by branding differently, giving you can use different names for your works. People write under non-diplumes, or you can present the work in different environments and try and disassociate. It's dangerous to start down that line for two reasons. One is that if people feel at any time that you've somehow been dishonest or not open with them, then they can lose faith in your brand. And the other thing is you're putting energy into all of these different streams, just like the studio and gallery have different streams of energy. Why not capitalize on them so that when you have a really good performance day and you're focused on an upcoming gig, that the time and energy that you're not putting into your visual or your writing or whatever your alternative is time that's still actually benefiting you as a brand. So I believe it's probably wiser not to play the game of multiples. Be open and honest and say, this is part of who I am. I'm a creative energy or spirit, and today I am expressing myself in this form. I think people will understand that and work with that better for the most part. And the same when it comes to your studio and your gallery. If you need just studio days, the gallery's closed on Monday, it's my studio day. It's the day I do messy stuff. Then you start with that in place. Put in place that in the beginning so that you're advertising and promoting. People will still show up. And if they've driven a distance to get you, they're going to be disappointed to see the closed sign. But if the hours actually are printed on a sign at your gate that actually says Monday closed, and it's not just you've put a bit of sellotape paper over the hours, but it's actually a planned thing, they're going to recognize it as their mistake for not doing the homework, instead of you withdrawing a service or an option from them that they were looking forward to. Anytime somebody takes away from you something you were hoping for or planning, even if you've elevated in your mind greater or with more importance than it truly had or has, you're going to or the result of that is going to be that your emotional state is going to drive the reaction. So don't give people a chance to be emotional. And the same with the branding question. They're going to feel an emotional response to what you do. And for most people, I suspect that you're going to find if they see that you have all of these gifts, all of these skills, they will give you permission to make more mistakes because you're obviously giving it a crack. I mean, look at me. I fumble and stumble over my tongue at times trying to do this. I think people, for the most part, who are listening will go, well, he's a gallerist. He's not a radio host. So, yeah, he makes the occasional bumble and he does get his words jumbled up because he's excited. But I'll get through that because I want to hear what the fool's got to say. And that's something that I think ultimately we have to remember, is that when you become a public persona, and if you're doing a studio gallery, you're making your process also a public thing, then the invitation is made by you. If you're the host, you've got to look after your guests. So weirdly, I blended those two things together. I hope that made sense. I'm pretty sure it did to me. If not, send me an email, give me some grief. I'll clarify as best I can. So there we have it. We've looked at the white box gallery and we've looked at the studio gallery. A little bit more waffly on the studio gallery because realistically it's a more waffly project. But if I've covered it well enough, and once I've read or listened back, we will move on to the art shop. If I haven't covered it well enough for my own comfort, you won't hear any of this because I'll re-record. I probably didn't need to share that. Anyway, the art shop. What's an art shop? An art shop is a gallery that has a constant supply of art in it versus a show catalogue. So it's a gallery that actually has normally a greater range of goods, multiple representations at all times. Still a gallery, but with a slightly more retail-based feeling to it. And that's what we're going to explore next. So thanks for your patience with this one. Hope it made some sense. And if you have any questions, you need clarification, as always, the offer's there. Listen to me babble the email address coming up, and give us a message, and I will do my very best to either get back to you or address it on the show. Well, today is gorgeous out, so I'm off to carve a piece of stone. Have a good one. Hi everyone, it's Neville here again. Hey, just before I go, I want to remind you that we now have a new email address. It's info@theartwonk.com, and also the artwonk.com is our website, which we're in the process of getting set up with show notes and follow-up from the shows. So please get in contact with us if you have any questions or feedback, especially if you feel that I glossed over something that's of importance to you. Really would enjoy having that connection with you as somebody who's trying to be a creative in today's environment, and let me know if there's stuff that I'm missing out or stuff you'd like to know. So now I'm off to my studio. Happy creating!